Welcome. It's another Managed Comics thought stream. Ooh, my lighting is a little bit off. Got my little lighting guy. He's casting a shadow on me. So welcome to this week's Managed Comics thought stream. This week we are going to talk about the ones and the O's data. I had a really great conversation with a bunch of people last week at the Comics Pro Data Summit. And it was really interesting. We had some really great discussions around data, and so we're gonna talk about some of that stuff at the Comics Pro Summit. One of our main things was that we didn't want to dictate solutions, so we were identifying problems, not dictating solutions. But we're on my podcast now, baby. So I'm going to actually talk about some solutions. And I'm hoping, if all goes according to plan, that we'll have a couple guests today. So that would be wonderful. In the meantime, check in if you're here. I see Julian from BD Cosmos is here. Hey, Julian, got some really cool information for you today about the development update. And then we'll get right into the data stuff. So why don't I pull up my fancy pants little deck here. My deck. Got to be very careful when you say that word, because if you're a New Zealander, it comes out totally different. So here's our agenda. As always, we're going to talk about a development update. We're going to do an introduction to comic data. We're going to talk about why good data is important. Adam from Bad Idea had an interesting take on this that I plan to prove him wrong today, because I'm going to specifically talk about how good data benefits publishers, how good data benefits stores, and then we'll talk about some of the issues that we face with the data, what data is needed going forward, and what I think we should be doing. So talking about actual solutions and not just problems. And then at the end, I'm gonna dictate some solutions that we can try. But let's start out with our development update. So for the week of October 21st, last week, we squashed a whole ton of bugs. And I haven't talked to you guys in a couple of weeks because last week was the Comic Pro Data Summit, which happened at the same time. One cool feature is we've updated the ability for you to change the pictures on your invoices. So now you'll see when an invoice's picture is missing. Super cool. That goes into our queue. And then I approve all those, and one day it won't just be me, but right now I approve all those, and then they go out to the whole network. So everybody then benefits from that. So usually by like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on Tuesdays, a bunch of the images have gotten fixed that were not correct. Terms of services. So we had a little bug in the system where any non-Canadian stores didn't see the terms of service or ISBN +5 trigger. We fixed that. That was just a little error in the wrapping of the code, but that's not a big deal. ISBN +5, it was adding it to all the UPC codes as well. That is totally my fault. I really spec'd that out poorly. I should have been really plain in that it only affects books and graphic novels, but the dudes added it to everything, and I didn't think to check that actually, because again, we had some issues there. Older series to subscription. So one of the requests that we got was when people are trying to add something on the back end, it was just defaulting to the same logic as we use on the front end. So if it's past FOC, don't allow it to be ordered. But there's a lot of cases where a store might want to add something that's past FOC. So boom, we added that part. And unchecking all publishers doesn't take. There was an interesting use case where somebody went in, removed all the publishers, and just added like the 3 that they were able to get from Lunar at the time, and that it didn't actually work. So it turns out our uncheck all didn't work because nobody had ever tried it before. Now it works, so that's a good bug. Those are the kinds of things that you don't see when you're testing, because I would have never tested, can I uncheck all? I don't know why. It just wouldn't be something that would kind of cross up. This is what's in approval right now. We're doing pre-order approvals. So with Managed Comics Classic, we actually had a system where people would pre-order something, or special order, we used to call it, and that went through a whole approval process. And part of that approval is that you could change the price as a retailer. because often the SRP isn't what you're going to charge, higher or lower. It could be either. So this actually approval process allows the customer to request items such as ratioed variants. It lets you as a store set a price for those variants, and then the customer will accept the offer and the pre-order becomes part of all the reports at that point. If they don't accept the offer within a certain period of time, the offer goes away and it is no longer something that will get ordered for them. So you can approve that thing in store, or you can have your by default your customer will be required to approve it. I just wanted to click this because it's fun. Good news, everyone. So we're currently at 12 stores. We're going to be adding new stores next week once we get the pre-order thing done. And then we will open wider and specifically to Canadian stores. And there's a very good reason for this, Julian. Right after our next big project, which we think will take about 2 to 3 weeks. So that's good news. Within 3 weeks, we're going to be opening way wider. I'm pretty confident that there's some things like initial orders and stuff that we'd love to kind of spruce up. But at this point, everything we're doing right now is happening the right way. And I'm confident that we're not going to hit limits and things like that. We went through a 2.5 hour process yesterday where we went through kind of everything that's on our backlog in terms of this new big project and how we would break it down. And I'm pretty confident with where we are with that now. So that brings us to what we're working on next. This is a major refactor. So we've been live for 8 weeks now, and we've noticed some major weaknesses. And one of them is actually one that Dal from Challengers Comics and Conversation brought up first, and I knew it was a risk, but I didn't think it was that big a deal. We create draft orders using something that's called a custom item. So it's not an actual product. Creating an order with products would require us to check in your entire invoice and actually create products for all those things, and then say, okay, most of these products have zero quantity. But then we're going to check in the products as they go into the draft orders. Anyway, that is kind of what we're going to do. For any local pickup stuff, we'll check in and we'll reserve the items and we'll hold it in a draft order. So you can actually reserve items in a draft order, which we found through the API. So that's kind of how we'll do that process. But the most important part is every single thing that will be in an order is actually a product, which means we can run reports on it. Now we're going to pull all that information back into Manage Comics because it's a lot easier for us to slice and dice reports. There's limitations like in Shopify, a report can only contain 250 items. So we want to be able to slice and dice that information better. Easiest way to do that is to pull all that information into Manage Comics, and then we'll do all the slicing and dicing on the back end. We're going to change the entire concept of pulls. Right now, we have a thing called pulls on our side navigation. It's actually going to be check-in, because really what you're doing when you're doing your pulls is you're checking in your items. So we're going to go through and change anywhere that it says pulls, change it to check-in, so that becomes kind of ingrained. I get a new order, I get new items in my store, I check them in. Once I've checked them in, then it goes through the Shopify process, and it also goes through and checks for special orders and stuff like that at the same time. This will allow us to do better stock tracking. And this one's a killer, tax exemptions. So got a bug from one of our current customers who's Canadian, who said that tax exemptions aren't properly happening. And I said, what? So then I looked into it a lot deeper. Tax exemptions in Shopify are frankly horrifyingly terribly implemented by Shopify, not by us. And that has caused an entire problem where I just assumed that something in a category would have the tax exemptions, but you actually have to individually identify which products have tax exemptions. Good news, this is all available through the API, so we'll have that all done. And last but not least, shipping options. We built the entire system and kind of forgot to factor in the fact that some customers are local, some customers have pickups, and we didn't really even think about like how do you deal with a monthly subscriber versus a weekly or biweekly, which is hilarious because we actually had that in Managed Comics 1.0, but we never considered it for 2.0. So yeah, we'll take care of all that. So let me just check out our comments again. You guys can comment and we'll bring this stuff up. So BD Cosmos says 5 to 6 weeks. Yeah, I'm pretty confident. My guys are pretty good about accurately estimating things. We'll know better next week just how big this is because they'll start working on it and they'll go, oh crap, or potentially, yeah, this isn't as bad as we thought. Does the agreed upon price stick to the item? So when ringing up the customer, the agreed upon price comes up instead of, yeah. So what's cool is that the product, when it goes through into an order, will actually come up with the price that you've pulled it at, if you will. Katie Pride of Books with Pictures, which, by the way, sweet new ink. I love it. I've been manually using custom items for draft orders for years, and it's not great. Yeah, so we won't have to use those anymore. We'll use the actual item in your thing. So Julian says, "Oh God, no! It has to be programmed to get tax exemptions." So yeah, it's really interesting that the way Shopify has implemented this, you actually have to add the products to a manual collection. You can't use an automated collection. I am going to get a hold of them and find out why, because that's ridiculous. And Katie says she's here for the data talk. Yeah. Good morning. It's afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here. It's 2 o'clock. Sorry. By the way, the reason we went an hour early this week is I am actually taking my son to a talk at the Canadian Warplane Museum from Bob Gurr, who was one of the original dudes who helped Walt Disney build. He was one of the original Imagineers, so we're really excited about that. So I got to go tight to 3 o'clock, so this has got to be a tight 1 hour at the most. Adam says, will the items be able to pull the cost as well? Yes, absolutely. It will bring in the cost. And so that was one of the other reasons is we want to have COGS and that good stuff. That's cost of goods sold. 2 p.m. Eastern time is still morning for some people. Oh, I know. I wish it was still morning for me. That's my old life. Actually, it's my kids' present life. They would stay until 5 o'clock if they could. So let's do an introduction to comic data. I'm going to do a brief history of comic data. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. I do not claim to be a historian on comic data. I just know what I know. I was around in the comics industry back in the late 80s, early 90s when the whole diamond kind of transfer took place. Up in Canada, we had, at least that I know of, 4 different distributors that we used: Andromeda, Multimag, Robin Hood, and I can't remember the other one that we used regularly. But those all went away when Diamond kind of took over, and we didn't think it would actually affect us in Canada. Andromeda was owned by Silver Snail, who was like the biggest store in Canada. We didn't expect them to get kind of pushed out, but pushed out they did. Adam Freeman from many places is here. Bob Gurr is my stage name. That's good stuff. I like it. How comes I can't hide? There we go. So Diamond became the data source of truth by default in the early 90s. They provide certain master files like preview data files. They conform to their own standard. They have their own categorization. They weren't great, but they were not bad. They were pretty good, right? They were the only game, so we just did what we could with it. And frankly, until probably 2010, let's say, data wasn't a huge thing because we didn't really need it for a lot of things outside of like ordering and stuff like that. So we weren't displaying things on websites and things like that that really require kind of consistent data. I want to thank, by the way, and this slide was supposed to go before the last one, Comics Pro for getting the ball rolling on this thing. Last week on October 14th, we had the comic industry data discussion with Laura Dawson, who's the head of quality at EDO Inc. And she was a really interesting speaker because she was part of kind of this similar transition in the book industry back in the early 90s or late 90s, I guess. So I was on a panel with John Bowman from Penguin Random House, Philip Sablik from Boom Studio, Joe Murray from Captain Blue Hen, Katie Pride from Books with Pictures, who's here today, and Laura Dawson, who was our keynote speaker. And I think we got in a little tete-a-tete with Adam at one point as well. So going back to the history, other distributors had other ideas. So other distributors for different products have different ways of displaying that data. Not a huge deal because most of these distributors have a often smaller subset of data, and Diamond carries similar stuff. So we kind of just conform to the data standard from Diamond and just kind of added and subtracted where we needed to. So in the spring of 2020, when DC left Diamond, sort of, that's when kind of the great upheaval really began with data, and it happened fast. I think that's a saying, like all of a sudden, what is it? It's like gradual, then all at once, or something like that. That's how it felt with Diamond and DC. We knew that there was probably something going on at some point, but nobody ever expected that all this stuff would be implemented in a couple months during a pandemic when the comic industry was shut down. So it was scary and terrifying and all those other bad words. Diamond was still to this day provides product for the UK, which means they still provide their own Diamond codes, series codes, etc. But those codes are no longer part of their regular downloads. So in the North American market, we can't just grab those files and do everything we do. Some of those files aren't even readily available through Diamond UK. And we have been trying to work with Diamond UK to get those files and to be able to do things with them because we have UK customers and want to help them out. One of the big problems is Diamond continued creating series codes. So a series code is a code that ties an entire series together. Batman, for example, I always use Batman, and I assure you I do know other comics than just Batman, but it's just the first one that comes to mind because he's my favorite hero. So Batman has a series code that's, let's say, 1372. So anytime that a Batman comic comes out, it's going to be tied to that 1372. Now, there's a bunch of other things like variant numbers and things like that that determine which cover it is and which issue it is and all that stuff. So tying that together is really important. Now, when Diamond continued creating those until December 31st, when in January, Lunar started creating their own. And at the time, it looked like there was going to be Lunar and UCS. UCS got out of the game kind of December for January 1st. So they Lunar started creating their own. So any new series going forward had a Lunar series code. Meanwhile, Diamond was still creating series codes, and we at the time were still using the Diamond series codes in all the DC product just so that we'd have kind of a consistent thing. That caused any number of problems that we'll talk about later. Due to Pullbox and the UK distribution, Diamond still maintains DC data. So Superman, Son of Kal-El is series code 145526. Issue number 6 has a Diamond code of October 213177. Interesting that for most of this time, Diamond has kind of reserved the 3000 area for DC, even though traditionally this would be, they would probably put it in like the 8 or 9,000s just because they already have the 10s to 3,000 usually locked up for their catalog. By the way, when I tell people that comics deal with 2,500 SKUs every month minimum, they kind of shake their head. Let's take a look at what Adam says here. Adam says Lunar provides product codes. One is their own, and a second code matches Diamond's, except it's off by 1 digit. That's what I noticed when comparing. Yeah, and that's fairly recently. They didn't have that file until that field until relatively recently. Yeah, that's a pain. I see my good buddy Django's here. Let's say hi to Django. Hey, Django.
Oh, hey, gosh, I wasn't ready so fast. I thought I'd hang out backstage for a while.
I can bop you back out. I just wanted to say hi because you're in here.
Howdy.
So Django and I have been talking data for quite some time now. God, how long have we been talking data?
All our lives, I think.
We've commiserated over many a whiskey over data. Yeah, it's been a while, and he kind of was going through the same problems. And Django provides a data file for the Mobi users, which is frankly really, really good. I honestly don't know how he does it. I'd like to actually steal some of his ideas right out of his head.
Please steal
it. Yeah, let me keep on with our history, and then we'll you and I'll jump in and chat with some of the issues, because I think we've talked about these issues in the past, and I think they're good things to talk about.
I'll be here when you need me.
When Penguin Random House came along, they do things entirely differently, and they do things like the book industry does, which is great in some ways, but it also means that they use different categorization. They use BISAC instead of the random ass diamond categorization. They have their own series codes. They have their own primary keys, which are USB or ISBN numbers, which is okay, except if you ever dare to open a Penguin Random House file in Excel, it will ruin my life and ruin the life of everybody who is involved in data, because Excel just munges the data terribly. But they've provided us a lot of new data that we've never seen before. So things like, I think they've got there's a family code, or so all the Spider-Man stuff is together. And there's a couple other things I've seen in there, but they also have entirely different format names, imprint names, all these other things as well. So all these things have caused issues. We have multiple item codes, we have multiple series codes, we have inconsistent series code, we have inconsistent data. This is one of my favorite despair.com images. No matter how great and destructive your problems may seem now, remember, you've probably only seen the tip of them. So true. So along came GeekFetch. We needed to solve our immediate problem. We structured the data in a way that we could control and present the data. We made it flexible enough to allow for expansion in the future. We knew right away that we wanted to bring in some other vendors like Asmodee and ACD and a couple other guys. So that meant that we wanted to be able to kind of conform to different types of data. And we also wanted to be able to bring in some controlled crowdsourcing so that our data will get better over time. We'll get more data. Many eyes on the data will find problems that a few people couldn't possibly. But when we get to 200, 300, 400 retailers looking at this data every week, our data is going to get real clean real fast, or it's going to get real terrible real fast. It's going to really depend on how good our moderating stuff is. So why is good data important? And I think this is where data, you're not data, Django. Where Django and I can kind of talk back and forth on this one. I think this is fair to say. So I got to be really, really clear. I have not owned a comic store in 10 years, and that may as well have been a century ago. The industry has changed so much in the last decade, and specifically in the last 5 years. 6 years ago, when I started Manage Comics, variant covers were so rare. Like House of M, I can remember being a big deal because it had variant covers, and Image swore that they would never do a variant cover. And I mean, now we see where we are today, and the industry kind of runs on variant covers. So there's more SKUs per title than ever before. There's more distributors than ever before. it's a full-time job just keeping up with orders. I think, is that fair to say, Django, being an actual comic shop runner?
Yeah, it's nonstop. One of my favorite things from the Comics Pro data talk the other day was at the end, the big rep from Penguin said, "I had no idea there were so many variants in comics."
Yeah.
Like it blew his mind.
Yeah.
And yeah, it presents a lot of confusion. But I think that with good information, it's all totally manageable by shops.
And I think that's the big thing that, like, I was trying to get through to Adam, and Adam and I have had a few conversations about data, and he says, like, data is your problem, it's not my problem. And my point is, like, the way it is now, stores have to pay attention to everything, which sometimes means they pay attention to nothing.
Yep.
Right? It gets so overwhelming. But if we can account for the 90% of stuff that is just kind of routine, and yeah, I have to check my numbers and stuff, but I'm not doing deep thinks on everything, it lets them really focus on that 10%. And that's the 10% of stuff that's going to make or break their numbers. It's going to make or break their business. You can't hand sell 2,500 SKUs. I don't care who you are. There's not enough time in the day.
No, I only hand sell Dark Knight books.
Well, there you go. Yeah, like specifically Frank Miller Dark Knight books.
The Dark Detective also, I guess.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So, and then on top of that, you need to know what to get, where to get it, who gets it, and when it goes to them, when it comes in. And you need to make sure that all changes on a dynamic basis. So, data is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, one big limitation that Mobi has is that it only lets one initial order exist, and it has to be through Diamond.
Yeah.
And so in order to hack Mobi, which is, not being updated anymore, we had to come up with a way to combine all of the distributors' data into one initial order so that retailers had the information that they need to place smart orders. And taking all the information from Lunar and converting it into something that would play nice and stay reliable with the month codes and just the way that Diamond does everything turned into it turned into me doing a lot of data stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that is the thing that a lot of folks don't realize, is that all of the systems that are in place right now were created in a reality where there was a single distributor. And so anything we do to get multiple distributors is going to be a hack or a something. So that's kind of why we built a system from the ground up, knowing that there's multiple distributors, there's multiple issues with variant covers and stuff like that, and figuring out kind of how we can help make that stuff work better.
It's the only way to keep moving.
Yeah,
is to allow other distributors and allow as many weird things as possible. Even some bad idea things need to be allowed into the process. Bad idea that the Adam's bad idea, not bad ideas.
we say words like that, and look who happens to appear on the. So I've only ever had one guest.
Happens? You can't just throw this shit around and not expect this to happen.
You're like an evil genie.
Yeah, that's right.
So Adam, so we're just talking about data and how important it is. We didn't even get to the part where I'm going to talk about why it's important for publishers, but you represent not just publishers, but also like companies that are doing variant covers. Tell the folks a little bit about what you do, because you wear so many hats.
I do. That's why I don't have any hair anymore. It's the hat friction of just taking the hats on and off. Yes. So my company, Prana Direct Market Solutions, we have a number of clients. I am the, I don't even know what my title is. One of the guys at Bad Idea. But I also have my own company called Prana, and we're focused on marketing and sales But also we do some stuff in production. We do a lot of I do a lot of consulting for publishers specifically, and for people who are in this space. So I mean, anything that is comics, and specifically comics that are filtering through comic shops, I get involved in a lot. I've been a retailer. I was an Eisner Award-winning retailer for about a decade. I did, but like you, it might as well have been 100 years ago at this point. I've worked for, I don't know, like a handful of publishers just as on staff, and then a couple dozen as clients. So I would say that my goal is always to be the guy who sees the whole board and understands how it all fits together. And I personally have been fighting this data fight, knowing that something like this could happen for about, I mean, Brian will attest, like something like 2 years now, 3 years now, like well before COVID and well before all of this began, because I saw this problem looming, and I saw that it was gathering steam. And I mean, you and I, Django, you and I both know when we were setting up Bad Idea, one of the first things I did was reach out to the POS providers and say, what do we need to do? Which is part of the reason why we did the deal with Diamond to handle the fulfillment, so that the data would filter through in the same way that filters through everybody else. Mm-hmm. So yeah. In that instance, I would say that you maligned my character, Brian, by saying I was saying it was not my problem, it's your problem. And honestly, I did get a little spicy on the Comics Pro thing, because partially I wanted to be able to give that sort of viewpoint of the data you're looking for comes from somewhere. Yep. And that data is a description of a program. Those programs are changing. Yep. They are dynamic. They have to be, in order to be competitive. They have to constantly be thinking ahead of, what everybody else has done and what works, and also be thinking creatively about what can work, what should work with the system we have right now. And sometimes they overstep. Sometimes we overstep as publishers, and things get broken. And any data system has to be resilient enough to handle that. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is that unless you have someone who is standing there saying, no, yes, you can, no, you cannot, which is nearly impossible, you need to have resilient data systems that can handle all of these tweaks and adjustments and new ideas and innovations that will feel like innovations a year from now, but now just feel like somebody who's trying to break shit. Yep. Right? So
no, absolutely.
That's the point I've been trying to make, and sometimes I get a little passionate about it and called argumentative. So.
And I 100% agree with you on that stuff. And I think that is probably the 5% edge cases that I would love to handle those. But right now we're so busy handling the 95% that are all edge cases.
Sure.
5% just gets, like, frankly, I'd rather not deal with that at all than, you know what I mean? Like,
what I'm saying is that I think that the cost of not dealing with that at all.
Yep.
So one of the pieces that you left out of your summary of that woman's amazing overview of the history of data in the book market, but one of the pieces that you left out of that I found to be absolutely illuminating, and that she did double down on later when I asked her about it, was that they had to build a standardized data system in order to sell books. Because books were selling online, because these new book market chains were starting, they needed a standardized system for books. And so they created this standardized system for books. And they said to the book market, you must conform to these things.
Right.
And have successfully done so. The guy blew his mind that we would do variants.
Yep.
Why the book market has never done that? I don't know. Right. But why not? Because they have a certain system that things work in. And I have done a lot of that work where you're taking comics into that system, and you have to shave off some of the more creative edges in order to put it into that hole. So my point being that once they did that, right, they created this conformed system that everybody must adhere to. What did that create? Anybody want to say the word? Because we don't want to say it out loud, right? Because they might hear.
Amazon.
That created Amazon.
Right.
The data created Amazon. Jeff
Sure.
Bezos didn't create Amazon. He was looking for something that had that data system that was conformed, that was standardized, and everything conformed to it, because that's how he could build. It's not as though he wanted to sell books for a living. He wanted to create this thing.
Right.
He found this product that had standardized data. My concern, as somebody who has spent his entire adult life working with comic shops, working in comic shops, my concern is for you guys. There are 2,953 brick and mortar stores in the US, right? And that number has not really fluctuated up or down more than 4% in 15 years,
Right.
including COVID, right? Django, guys like you've done everything you have to in order to stay open, including closing your doors just so you can continue to put product out, right?
Right.
You guys have changed your operation completely. What I'm saying is that the risk here for shaving off that 5% that you're complaining about, that you both are absolutely complaining about, and justifiably so, the cost of that is creating something standardized and cookie cutter that will very easily fit into Amazon. And I promise you, they are having those meetings. They are sending people to Diamond. They are sending people to Lunar. I'm sure they've sent people to Midtown. They are sending people there to say, if we can get the data right, if we can set up subscriptions, will you handle the fulfillment? Because you know how to put comics in a box.
Yeah, but
I don't think all of this to say it leaves an opportunity for Django and Brian and Stu to do the work that you do, right? Is that we need you guys, because you guys are that filter, and you should be compensated as that filter, right? But you are the control that keeps this contained within the comic shop network.
I don't think that having good data is bad for comic stores.
I don't think so either, but I think it's also really good for Amazon.
I think what Adam's saying though is that maybe having open data is a bad idea for comic stores. Good data kind of is I mean, everybody's goal. You would have to be a supervillain to say that good data is a bad idea.
Yeah,
all due respect to bad idea.
It's okay.
But yeah, open versus closed. That's totally a conversation that could be had, and that's probably important to have.
But that data could also have come from Diamond. If Diamond had data that happened to work with everybody's existing systems, and so the bottleneck right now is forcing old systems to use these new data formats. It's less about the availability of the information, because most of that information is available to us right now, except in areas where it's not, where we're getting bad data from a publisher or a distributor, like mismatched barcodes or whatever.
No, and that brings up a whole other. Yeah, we got to get to that at some point. Barcodes.
I think here's what I would say is if you really want to go down this road, and again, this is something that I seriously studied. Brian will attest to this.
Yeah,
we had a meeting.
So just
we were in a partner.
Some kind of backstory. Adam and I started talking about this probably 18 months ago, and we were actually talking about kind of the Geek Fetch before Geek Fetch.
Right.
This was
pre-COVID.
Yeah.
It was almost 2 years ago, I think, at this point.
So we had started talking about this kind of stuff, and it like our conversations honestly started spurring in me a need to figure it out for myself, and then that kind of led to where I am today. Simultaneously, Django was doing similar kind of stuff, unbeknownst to any of us.
That was just self-defense.
Yeah, I know, it's true. So yeah, you've got multiple people, and like I said, like Adam came at this with a totally different kind of point of view than I was even thinking at the time. So yeah, I don't mean to paint you as the bad guy here at all. That's
all right. I'm okay with. I mean, you don't wear this beard without people wanting to think of you as the bad version. You're the evil twin.
I always say the bad guy gets the best lines anyway.
Exactly.
Super villain named the Disruptor.
That's exactly. but like this is what led me to be involved in Comic Hub. It's what led me to get to know you, Brian. It's what led me to you, Django. You and I have had these conversations. Mm-hmm. I've been intrigued by this problem for a very long time. What I think that there is, and then Katie and I have been talking about this, and I think you're wrong, but that's okay. I think this ball is really far down the field in a couple of different places, and there's some things I can't talk about, some things I've heard. Well, but I think that what we have to do is we have to be really careful with what do we need for you to do your work,
for sure. Right?
What do the publishers need to do their work? And let's provide that. Instead of trying to say everyone must conform to this set of standards, which will limit creativity, it will limit disruption, it will limit innovation. All of those things are true. Look at the book market and how stale it is. And the thing that's selling the best in comics, in bookstores and libraries right now, graphic novels, right? Because we've been over here innovating and playing and creating. So what I'm saying is that we have something unique. We have something that's worth protecting. And I think that what you two do and what Stu does is incredibly valuable because it gives you guys what you need, Django, but it also protects what we have. And I think it's worth protecting.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are against, I don't think anybody is against, innovation. I think the thing that slows comic stores down is not having any data or not having accurate data. If you come up with some new crazy way to sell comics that doesn't fit into the data sets that we already have, filling in as many fields as we possibly can and dealing with those few items is not the end of the world.
Heck, creating new fields wouldn't be that bad a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing.
It wouldn't be bad for you and me, Brian. But not all systems are flexible like that.
Well, you know what? You guys you have to justify your place too. You got to work too, man. Come on.
Like I said, I'm fine with working. So let me get to some of our issues, and then I'm gonna bump you up for a second, Adam.
Okay.
If you gotta go,
you know what? I'm in and out because I caught between meetings. I have to go get prepped for the next one.
I appreciate it. And you know what? This will be online. You can check it out later, and then you can yell at me offline.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right. Thanks, friend.
It's great to see you.
All right. Let's go back because, some of the things that Adam's talking about, I think we kind of talk about. And while I was putting together this slide deck today, I actually came up with some solutions to things. And that's kind of why I wanted you here, Django, is because when we get to those solutions, I really want to talk through some of them. And I think I have an idea for ratioed variance that I think is freaking genius. And it just came up to me like as I was typing words. The modern comic shop runs on data because your point of sale system is using data. Your website's using data. Websites aren't going anywhere. And frankly, like click and collect and all that kind of stuff is probably the biggest revolution to the industry in the last 15 years. And I think that is one of the main things. And where it gets interesting is talking to stores like, I'm sure you guys do this, but I've talked to Comic City in Michigan. And what they do is they insist that people pick up stuff in store. They don't want to ship things. So people come up and pick up their prepaid items and go, oh, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab this. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a reason for them to get downtown to the bookstore and then to pick things up. There's more SKUs than ever before because every comic has multiple variants. So that's changing things. Brandon from Variant Edition did a really great kind of breakdown on the per SKU, the per title sales and how that has gone down dramatically because you used to sell 50 copies of Batman. Now you sell 10 copies of Batman A, 22 copies of Batman B. So the Batman's still selling the same as what it was selling, but now it's selling it across 6 or 7 different SKUs, which is extra effort for the store. They have to figure out how many of each one of those they're going to get and hope they're betting on the right variant covers and not the wrong variant covers. And again, non-returnable product. All of the risk is on the retailer. None of it's on the publisher. So full-time job keeping up with orders. And we already went through this slide. And the next slide was going to be a bad idea. How funny is that? So better data makes it easier to order. Data that conforms to standards will make it better presented on websites, which makes it kind of consistent. Now, I understand Adam's thing is that for Amazon, that could prove a problem, but Amazon's getting this data already for Comixology.
If they can't scrape this stuff.
Yeah. Well, they get it for Comixology. I refuse to believe they couldn't get it for individuals. They just don't see the profit potential there. Consistent.
There's not a huge one.
Well, there's not. You're talking about dollars instead of like tens of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Consistent information from other sources would be very helpful. For the stores, it simplifies ordering. They can quickly view items and see what requirements there are, because we could actually do kind of like parsing of orders based on, you want to see how many ratioed variants you need. You need to quickly see, like right now, I honestly can't believe that anybody could ever figure out how Marvel's ratioed variants work without sitting there and just like going crazy from the data.
Brute force. Yeah.
So we'll get to this at the end. I think I have a solution for that. But what it would mean is you could see all of your orders for cover B, which is the trigger for the cover Z, for example. And figuring that kind of stuff out. And when you don't have to focus on data, you can figure out how to make your listings unique. So my big thing to comic stores is every one of you guys has a unique selling proposition. There's a specific reason why people choose one store over another. In my town, there's 5 comic stores. There's one of them I won't go to because the owner is just a jerk. I've never liked him. I'll never walk foot in that store. There's another one where it's just too crowded and I feel claustrophobic when I walk into it. And there's one where I worked with the guy that owns it is the first guy who hired me for a comic shop. So guess which one I'll frequent. But I mean, every store is like there's a reason. The one store is really, really heavy into games. So if you're into gaming, like they're the store in town where you go. And yeah, like every store has a unique selling proposition. So making your website reflect that will actually, cause more people to go. Things like reviews, commentaries, and picks gives you more time for hand selling. So here's where Django gets involved. The issues we see are there's no standards. There's bad character breaks in the data fields. There's improper formatting inside the files themselves. Data is entered in inconsistent ways. All the data requires manual verification 90% of the time. This is the stuff that I want to get away from because this is just effort. And the worst part about it is Django's doing it. I'm doing it. Stu's got people doing it. Conan is doing it over at my comic shop. Like there are so many people wasting so many cycles on this. It's just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Some of the missing information, proper categorization. So right now we're using Diamond's categorization, which is weak to be kind. But you know what? Like, I don't want to pick on it. It's what they built at the time. It's not like they did it maliciously. It just seemed right. And what we do today won't necessarily be right in 5-10 years.
How would they have known that YA shouldn't be Yahweh?
How would they know?
How would they know when they invented it, 20 years ago or whatever?
There was no Hunger Games 20 years ago, Django. We don't have information about parent series, and parent series wasn't a thing 20 years ago. You didn't start and stop Batman 3 times in the last decade. There's no crossover information, which is one of those things that you think there should have always been, but we don't know what's Fear State and what's not. There's no title families. So Batman family versus Spider-Man family versus, and the interesting thing is the catalogs are still broken up this way, but there's literally no data about this stuff.
There is. There's a family code. It doesn't apply to everything, and it's not super consistent, but they have a field.
Yeah, they do. And I think they call it brand code.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's 2 letters, and sometimes those 2 letters apply for, like, there's multiple BAs, which is Batman.
Right. SM. Is that Superman? Spider-Man?
Well, that's Spider-Man, obviously. Superman is SU. So ratios, there's no ratio information other than in a text field, which is inconsistent. There's no ratios tied to specific covers data other than in a text field, which again is inconsistent. Creator information is all over the place, and creators are called 17 different names. And this is the one that horrified me that Katie pointed out, is that UPCs and ISBNs get reused, which I had no idea, and made me throw up in my mouth on screen. I've never had that happen before. So that's terrifying. And that's the kind of thing that somebody needs to kind of be in charge of and making sure it doesn't happen. So we talked a lot at the Comics Pro event about the book industry standard group, which started in 1996 or 7 as kind of a direct response to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all these guys going online and having totally different information. So things that they have include capitalization. So one of the big things I hate is that Diamond's information is always capitalized. I can reverse engineer capitalization with about an 80% accuracy. But if it came lowercase and actual proper title case, I could reverse engineer it to capitalization with 100% accuracy.
I'll bet that they did that so that they didn't have to reverse engineer bad data from their publishers to begin with.
It could be, but it also could be, my assumption is that they started with AS400s, which didn't have, camel case and stuff like that. So they were probably dealing with systems where capitalization was the norm, and then flipping it was because I bet you they didn't have solicitation information and stuff like that in their main database until probably 10, 15 years ago.
Well, it's a separate table when you get it from them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Welcome to the future, Brian.
Yeah, right? The future.
The future of capital letters.
So it has things like creators, trade dress. Now, creators are a lot simpler in the book industry. We need standard kind of on sale FOC order dates. Order date is a big one because none of the distributors really are kind of implementing this. So order dates on a game is way different than the order date on a comic, which is produced, 3-4 weeks in advance. A game is put onto a cargo ship 6 months ago and hopefully is sitting in LA right now, ready to go on street date in a couple months. And variant types. We also need things like series volume, parent series, so the previous volume of that series, family series, crossovers, storylines, characters. Those would all be great as well. And so the reason I brought up a lot of these is because they're actually being munged into titles and things like that right now. Storyline's a good example where Marvel will call it Amazing Spider-Man 75 Cinema. It's Sinister War. And we need like atomic data. We need ratio information. We need how the ratios are calculated. How ratio calculations. So English. We need age ratings and page counts and height, widths, lengths, and weights. A lot of these things are because the modern comic store went with, what was it, 2,900 comic stores?
Yeah, something like that. 2730, something.
I'll tell you, having formerly owned an online comic shop, the reason we were successful in Canada is because there are so many comics fans who are 2, 3, 4 hours away from a comic shop in Canada and still love comics and didn't want to give up on the medium. And we had 250 customers when I was there who were through mostly rural areas of the country. So knowing height, width, lengths, and weight really makes shipping possible. So we need better standards. I talked to my dev team earlier today, and they were like, yes, CSV is okay. And actually they dropped my heart because I wrote this slide before I even asked them. And they were like, if I said, if you could have the data in any field or type, what would you want? And I got back CSV. I was like, no, that's wrong. And then when we started talking about it, they were like, oh, yeah. You know what? XML would be better, but the best would be JSON because you can parse it quicker. So even though I think XML probably has the best kind of formatting. They like JSON just because they'd be able to format it quicker.
I mean, I think for my money, the most important thing is to have all three of those available.
I think so
to
too.
whoever.
Yeah.
Like Penguin, for example, has more data than Diamond does, but pulling it out of their system and reformatting it is a burden for a lot of people.
Like Katie just said, this is dreamy. You know what's funny? I started writing this today, and a lot of kind of my I budgeted an hour to write this slide deck. Well, I started at 9 and I finished it at 1 today, and I didn't take any breaks. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of got coalesced in my mind as we were going through things and really thinking about solutions. And this is one of my favorite quotes in Battlestar Galactica. All this has happened before and all this will happen again. And I just feel like,
so say we all.
Bisig figured it out with Onyx. Now, the specific things for the comic trade is going to be different. But Adam's right. We probably need to create a closed system instead of an open system, which Onyx is open. We would probably want to create a closed system. But having all this information is something that's happened before. And as we can see with PRH's data, because there's a shit ton of comic data in the PRH. I've got a 4.5 megabyte data file of all the comic stuff that is available for Penguin Random House. So this data is out there and it's already in Onyx. So it's not impossible. And just making us conform to some more standards will really, really help get clean data in. Onyx includes the title, author, ISBN, price, availability, blurb reviews, extracts, BISAC subject codes, territorial rights, which is really interesting, links to websites, book cover images. And by the way, the Penguin Random House book cover images are so good, like so good. And their site is fast and it never goes down. And I don't get ugly previews.
This image coming soon.
Yeah, exactly. So some solutions I'd like to put forward. We need to agree on some standard formats, and we don't have to agree on all the standard formats. We don't have to steal BISAC and just make it ours. We do need to involve publishers a lot more. There was just one publisher, I think, at the summit. I just deleted something. We need to crowdsource information. Crowdsourcing, I think, is the way that we'll really be able to get this information out there faster. Dump the CSV and Django, I like your idea. Don't necessarily dump it, but let's just stop using it as the primary source and have it as an alternate source.
Yeah.
Embrace aggregators. So there's going to be a few people who are going to create the data and then stream that data out. We got to embrace that as kind of a feeling. Right now, it almost feels like I'm stealing data all the time, which is ridiculous because it's not Diamond's data. It's not Lunar's data. It's DC's data. It's Marvel's data. Like Penguin Random House kind of made me realize that and how open they are with the data. It's because they want to sell more stuff. So they want to get it out. Katie says, I thought Microsoft Word files were the current standard at the time. So apparently the ingest format is a Microsoft Word file that then gets hand bombed into a system, which means this is why that infuriates me. It means that somebody at DC is typing in some words into a Word file, and then somebody at Diamond is copying and pasting that into probably an old AS400 in the corner. And then somebody is like amalgamating that stuff. And really, if the DC people were entering all this stuff into some fields and then that just went to a system, it'd be so much more efficient, and it's not any more work.
Yeah.
It's actually less work from all the downstream providers.
Yep.
And we need an industry body, which is why, I'm so happy that Katie's here because she's part of Comics Pro. I'm so happy that we had this conversation with Marco last week and that Jen Haynes and all those folks were there because they all recognize that this is a problem. And hey, there's already an industry body.
Yeah.
Hey, surprise. You're soaking in it, Marge. So this is, tell me if this is a good idea or a bad idea, Django. I'll zoom in on the screen.
All right.
So here's where I came up with my idea. Ratio variants are important. So we have a variant lettering field. And originally I thought numbering field, but I think variant lettering might work better. I'm not sold on that. Numbers would probably be better because we could have 2000. Quantity order indicator. So this is where we would just say 1 to 1 means it's an open order. 1 to 7 means for every 7 copies order, or for every 7 copies you get 1. Or maybe it'd be 7 to 1. I don't know. We can talk semantics later.
1 to 7 is my vote.
So a specific incentive indicator would be 17C, meaning that for every 7 C covers, you could order 1 of this new cover.
And what if it's a Marvel situation? Would it be 1, 7, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, K?
Sure.
Okay.
Now that gets into the A, B, B. But if we had commas between those, that'd be fine. But yeah, I think so. And it would probably have to be like A plus B plus G plus K.
If I were structuring the database, I would probably want, instead of colon separators, I would want separate fields.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And the variant, I mean, letters versus numbers, it's all translatable.
Yeah.
My gut would be to go with numbers, but
yeah,
I don't think that there's a huge pro or con either way there. But yeah, that having that type of data that would make things so much easier for people like you and me who are designing systems to deal with that. I don't know that it would make any sense to Comic Suite until they did an update. But for like you, me, Stu, people who are actively developing, if these fields one day showed up as accurate information that we had access to, this would make my business partner's life so much easier when he's placing the initial order.
The thing that I see, these become filtering things, so that you can say, please show me all the things I need to do to qualify for this ratio. And you could even calculate the number. Okay, you're 5 off. So for the publishers, how does this benefit them? Well, now you're going to have more people ordering stuff because they don't have to do ridiculous math, because systems are going to figure out the math for them. Because I guarantee you, 9 out of 10 people, when challenged, will say, I would rather not do math.
Oh yeah. and like, I would rather not do math for the sake of, being able to order 1 more dynamite variant.
Right.
Like, my total profit on that's less than $2. So it's probably not worth sitting down and making a list of all the other copies you've ordered and adding them up.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of closing out, what are we doing? And this should not just say Manage Comics, because Django's part of this, Adam's part of this. There's a lot of people that are doing work on this, but I want folks that are on the Manage Comics thought stream to know that Manage Comics is taking part in the conversations. We're talking with Comics Pro. We're involved in a comic shop data collaboration group. We offer our expertise and support to stores, and we're looking for other ways to get involved. So we're definitely, this is an active thing that we're doing. And I'm going to skip the next time on thought stream thing and just go to us because we're fun. Katie says that she's got another meeting with Penguin Random House this afternoon. If we've got any data related stuff that we wanted to raise, I'm pretty happy with Penguin's data right now. I think the things that we need to get are probably like kind of due for a conversation with some folks there, but they're doing a great job. And the fact that they give us this data every night, like every night I get a whole feed of data that's spectacular. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything specifically for them. Brian, I heard that you're gonna make new industry standard series codes and distribute them to everybody.
Oh, I am?
Maybe that was just a dream that I had.
So yeah, GeekFetch actually creates so we have something called the GeekFetch ID for every product, and we also have a GeekFetch series code. So we take all the amalgamated series codes in, and as long as we can match it up to another series code, be it Lunar, Diamond, Penguin, Random House, then we know that those are all part of the same family. Then we assign it the same GeekFetch series code. We also have some eyes on project problems. So when we see stuff that's weird, we go in there and tweak it, which breaks other parts of the system, but we won't talk about that. Yeah. So yeah, my goal is to make this something that will, because I can kind of amalgamate everything into one table, I can jam it back out however people need it. So as long as, if I could get, Diamond's series codes that they're providing to use on Pullbox and for Diamond UK into our system, then I could provide, actually Diamond standardized series codes for people, and then they wouldn't need mine. They'd have whatever they need.
Right.
Walt from Berlin says, greetings from Berlin. Hello, Walt.
Howdy.
So I'm actually 8 minutes late to get onto into my car and head to pick up my kid for our exciting evening at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum. How Canadian's that? But Django, I want to thank you for participating. I know I brought you in a little earlier than what you may have thought you were coming in.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here for you. I really appreciate everything you do, man. It's nice to have somebody else who I can shout out about this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. If people could see our text messages.
They would probably be really impressed with how smart we are and maybe cancel us both. It's like alternating situations.
You said what? One last question. If you can get gaming data into GeekFetch to adapt managed comics to handle gaming, that also would be huge for hybrid stores. So we've done some, but we haven't really made it a priority. So my goal right now is to get managed comics making me money, and that's funding all the free volunteer work I do with data.
Board game series codes.
Yeah, at some point we'll get that. Actually, I've got a whole plan to GeekFetch actually has a Shopify plugin. It's terrible, and so we've kind of pulled it off the market for now. So we're going to revamp it, and once I get doing that, then we can kind of send that out to other people. Walt just asked, quick one, Diamond UK codes anytime soon integrated. Love to. Haven't even started having those conversations. I've got some conversations going on to get information, but frankly, Diamond is not terribly forthcoming with anything. So I don't know. I don't know a timeline or anything. Again, I gotta take care of the current problems before we can start really working on the volunteer stuff that I like doing.
Thanks, Brian.
Django, thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
Have fun at the War Museum. The airplanes.
I will. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll have some whiskeys soon and and commiserate.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, Val. All right, that is going to wrap up this thought stream. Next week, we're going to talk November previews. We will talk about what looks interesting. And of course, we'll take your questions as always. And if you have any questions at any time, please hit help@managedcomics.com, which will get a hold of me personally. And yeah, we'll talk soon. So you will see me next week. Same Managed Comics time, same Managed Comics channel. Thanks a lot.